My name is Cameron, and welcome to this episode of Take on the South. Today we will be discussing Southern rock legends Lynyrd Skynyrd and their many accolades. What even is Southern rock? A brief history will be necessary, followed by some analysis of their greatest hits. Let's begin. Lynyrd Skynyrd, the epitome of 1970s Southern rock. Lynyrd Skynyrd is a band from Jacksonville, Florida that formed in 1973. Their rise to fame being their energetic blend of blues, honky-tonk, and rock-styled music. Some of their most popular hits include Simple Man, Tuesday's Gone, Sweet Home Alabama, and the most iconic Southern rock ballad that they have released, Freebird. Many people may be under the impression that Lynyrd Skynyrd is just one person, but it definitely is not. They are a band originally comprised of over 9 members. Of these, Ronnie Van Zant, Alan Collins, Gary Rosington, Ed King, Steve Gaines, Billy Powell, Leon Wilkeson, Bob Burns, and Artemis Pyle are included. They named their band after their high school gym teacher, Lynyrd Skynyrd, who criticized their long hair. Lynyrd Skynyrd is on the Rolling Stones Top 100 Greatest Artists of All Time list, ranking at number 95. They were also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on March 13, 2006 by Kid Rock. Not to mention the fact that they had one of the highest grossing tours of the late 90s, early 2000s. Their use of rock riffs, guitar solos, and Southern pride have amounted them to honest Southern rock greatness. The band is a representation of a Southern way of life. They symbolize freedom, rebellion, and persistence. The band came to a screeching halt when tragedy occurred. On a flight from Greenville, South Carolina to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a plane crash led to the deaths of members Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Cassie Gaines, and Dean Kilpatrick in 1977. This left a hole in the band and immediately caused a split. After a 10-year break, the band regrouped and continued making music, releasing a few albums, some including The Last Rebel and 20. Even though many of the members were missing, they found replacements to make the band feel whole again. Johnny Van Zant, Ronnie's younger brother Ed King, and Randall Hall came to fill in the cracks so the band could continue to make music. This band became the second generation of Lynyrd Skynyrd. What even is Southern rock? Southern rock is a genre of blues, jazz, and country, and rock. It takes the soulful heart of Southern tradition and infuses elements of rock and roll, country, and blues. Electric guitar is an essential as well as drums, bass, and a lot of layers. Multiple guitars and elements of feedback and reverb on the electric guitars add a story and emotion to the song. This genre obviously came tearing through the South also as a new way of exhibiting Southern pride. I would like to discuss specific elements of their most popular songs and the controversy surrounding the band. The Southern rebels they had to write a comeback song defending the South. Some claim they defended their right for civil rights in the song, and others say this has further pushed their racist reputation. That is a pretty hard claim to shake, considering they played many shows with the Confederate flag as a backdrop. What other song to stir up this much controversy than Sweet Home Alabama? The song is a jab at Neil Young's Southern Man that claims Southerners are all racist bigots. Sweet Home Alabama is defending the South by saying that not all Southerners can be categorized in that way just because they're from the South. For example, the lyrics, "In Birmingham they love the governor," and you hear the band echo, "Boo, boo, boo," is the band's way of stating they disagree with segregation that the governor of Alabama, George Wallace, was advocating for. This song is all about Southern pride while also acknowledging the South is not all perfect. It is mentioned that Southern rockers clung to rural roots, committing themselves to unquestioning traditionalism in the face of national anti-South criticism. The iconic guitar riff at the start is known in, if not most, all homes in the South and across the United States. It is also ironic considering they're not even from Alabama. This is dedication. Another legendary song that I want to briefly mention is Freebird. This over 9-minute Southern rock ballad symbolizes freedom and independence. This is a song about someone who is longing for freedom, whether that is physical, mental, or spiritual freedom. The bird in the song is symbolic of being in a relationship and wanting to leave because you cannot change for the other person. Freedom is better than changing. It is emotional, bluesy, and twangy. It is, in my opinion, the Southern rock ballad. Not to mention the instrumentation and pace pick up speed as the song goes on. And at about the halfway mark, there is an instrumental where the drums set a new rhythm, and Van Zant repeats, "Lord knows I can't change. Won't you fly high, Freebird?" Collins then follows with the iconic 4-minute, 15-second guitar solo. There are 3 guitars on the song to add layers and rhythm alongside the solo. It is truly such an iconic representation of Southern rock. To wrap things up, I just want to reinforce the fact that Southern rock is the anthem of the Southern way of life. It is intense, soulful, rebellious, and amazing. Lynyrd Skynyrd gives an example of what Southern rock should be. The last founding member of the original band, Gary Rosington, died on March 5, 2023. Just because the original band members are gone does not mean the legacy has died. The second generation band continues touring to this day, their originals and new iconic songs. Without Lynyrd Skynyrd, Southern rock would have a whole different image. Once again, my name is Cameron, and thank you for tuning in to learn more about our Southern rock legends, Lynyrd Skynyrd, on this episode of Take on the South.
Hello and welcome to Take on the South. My name is Logan Rodgers and I will take you on a short journey through the life of blues singer Blind Willie Johnson, his life, his music career, and his legacy left among the stars. Blind Willie Johnson was one of many black musicians whose work was recorded, published, and sold by record companies as race records throughout the 1920s and 30s. The Columbia record label worked with Johnson on 4 recording sessions from 1927 to 1930. The first 2 took place in Dallas, the third in New Orleans, and the final in Atlanta. In total, Johnson recorded just 30 tracks, and they were surprisingly popular. The records from his first 2 sessions sold over 15,000 copies, enough back then to rival the popularity of top artists like Bessie Smith. It's not improbable that other great blues artists like Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters heard and possibly were influenced by his work. But as the Great Depression hit, Johnson disappeared from the music scene, never recording another piece of music again. Among the 30 recorded tracks we have of Johnson's work, we see a variety of selections, along with different vocal and instrumental techniques being used throughout. There are some blues tracks like It's Nobody's Fault But Mine, as well as Christian hymns and gospel such as Let Your Light Shine on Me. In some songs, Johnson sings in a calm, natural voice, while in others, overpowers the stage with his chest, singing in a deep, gravelly tone. But there is one track among these 30 that stands above the rest, one that single-handedly defined Blind Willie Johnson's life, a track titled Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground. Johnson doesn't sing a single word in this track. He instead just hums along with his guitar, making simple slides, strums, and plucks on the strings from start to finish. The title of this track stems from the lyrics of a 19th century English hymn, which Johnson beautifully deconstructs and visualizes throughout this music. This song, if you can call it that, makes you feel chilled, eerie, and alone. When Samuel Charters first listened to this track in 1948 at age 16, he was infatuated by it, and to an extent, Johnson. He later moved to New Orleans in 1953 and traveled across Texas, interviewing anyone who had a connection to Johnson. Luckily for him, he found Johnson's wife Angeline, who told everything she knew about the man, his birth, his childhood, and the music he made. However, his life came with many hardships. According to Angeline, Johnson's father found his second wife in the embrace of another man and beat her. In retaliation, she poured lye, a chemical used in cleaners, into the young Johnson's eyes, blinding him. In 1949, Johnson and Angeline's house burned down from a fire, forcing them to sleep in the open air on a bed dampened from the firefighters' efforts to put out the fire. Johnson then caught pneumonia, and according to Angeline, was denied medical attention at the hospital because of his race, and later died. Although Dark Was the Night was recorded long before these events, it feels as though it describes Johnson's life down to a more fundamental level given the context. While Charters was interviewing people across Texas associated with Johnson, astronomers and cosmologists were sending messages out into space to hopefully contact any interstellar civilizations. These efforts to contact outer space culminated in the creation of the Voyager space probe's golden record in 1976, titled The Sounds of Earth, which features over 90 minutes of meticulously selected pieces of music that represent humanity and its history. When Timothy Ferris, one of the leaders of the project, found and listened to Dark Was the Night, he was just as moved by it as Sam was nearly 3 decades before, calling it one of the most fundamentally moving pieces of music ever recorded. So now, Blind Willie Johnson's music sits on a vinyl record strapped to a space probe over 15 billion miles away. His work spawned a legacy bigger than he could have imagined, fascinating future musicians, historians, authors, astronomers, and if they exist, maybe some extraterrestrials too. This man lived a life full of struggle and hardship, always living in the darkness. And based on the music he recorded, he constantly sought out guidance from God to help him get through that darkness. Johnson loved music and wanted to leave his mark. And if you ask me, I think it paid off. I'm Logan Rodgers, this is Take on the South, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Good morning and welcome to Take on the South. My name is Will Byars, and today I'm going to be exploring Widespread Panic. Widespread Panic is a southern rock/jam band from Athens, Georgia. The band consists of founding members John Bell, Michael Hauser, who died in 2002, Dave Schools, Domingo Sonny Ortiz, Jimmy Herring, and Dwayne Trucks. Todd Nance was the original drummer, and he died in 2020. Widespread Panic is a jam band, and so this means that they focus on their live performances over their studio albums. Their fans are compelled to attend every show possible due to the improvisation and the random cover songs that could pop up at any time due to the random set list that the band uses for every show. Athens was known for being the town that produced the B-52s and quickly became famous for acts such as REM, Widespread Panic, and now the Drive-By Truckers. Widespread Panic was founded in Athens, Georgia in 1986 by John Bell and Michael Hauser when they met in their dorms at the University of Georgia. They both played the guitar and quickly enjoyed playing and jamming together. During this stage, they wrote songs that are still popular today when they play in concert, such as Chilly Water and Driving Song. Dave Schools, who plays bass, and Todd Nance on the drums, and Sonny Ortiz quickly joined in after that. Widespread Panic took influences from almost every genre of music, and they cite many influences like Van Morrison, the Grateful Dead, Miles Davis, Steely Dan, the Beatles, and Tito Puente. I believe this wide range of influences plays into the range of the band itself and allows for the improvisation and wide range of cover songs. The Panic concerts, the live shows, are known for their psychedelic lights and visuals, which goes along with the groundwork that bands like the Grateful Dead, the Allman Brothers, and Phish kind of laid out for them. The live concerts are also known for the improvisation within the songs that they play, so no song is the same. And the set lists are improvised, so no two concerts could have the same set list, so every concert is different. The band also involves cover songs that are kind of mixed into the live set list just randomly. And the covers could span from genres such as reggae, grunge, blues, rock, country, etc. This is a big part of the reason that the fan base that call themselves the Spreadheads, which is a play on the Deadheads of the Grateful Dead, religiously flock to the shows. Panic also has a set of venues that they're very well known at, such as Red Rocks Amphitheater in Morrison, Colorado, where they have the record for the most sold-out shows, the Orion Amphitheater in Huntsville, and the House of Blues at Myrtle Beach. Widespread Panic fans share many traditions with other jam band fan bases, such as the famous Shakedown Street, which is a place where, before the show, vendors set their products out to sell. These products can range from shirts, posters, like food items, and other recordings that people have recorded from the live shows. And many bands within the jam band genre allow taping of their live shows, which just allows the fans to do this. This started with the Grateful Dead, who allowed fans to freely tape the live shows, and has been copied by a lot of other bands in the genre. This is one of the main reasons that many jam bands like Widespread Panic or the Grateful Dead have such an extensive live music catalog. Widespread Panic has made a lasting mark in the jam band community by being one of the few large bands within the genre that comes from a southern background. Most of the audience is people who have spent some time in the southern U.S. or from there. I found Widespread Panic the summer after I graduated high school, and at first I thought it was a little bit weird, but slowly it grew on me. I went to my first show in 2022 when they played in the Township Auditorium in Columbia, and I'm looking forward to go to a few more shows this summer. The songs echo something that you can't put your finger on or describe, but it is unequivocal that they are authentically Southern. The music brought me to Widespread Panic, but the people in the concert atmosphere made me stay.
Hi, this is Brooks Bishop. I'm coming to you from Columbia, South Carolina today on the Country Music Podcast, Take on the South. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to talk about a few great country music artists, how music and branding has changed through the years, and even though in a little bit of politics. Whether you like politics or not, it's played a big part in the country music scene. Well, it's irrelevant right now. We'll also talk about some of our favorite country music artists and their impact on country music today. I have a few great book listeners still want to check out the cover, Legends of Country Music. Stay with us. One of my favorite country music artists in today's era, Jason Aldean. If you are listening to like country music, then you know who Jason Aldean is. I'm starting with him because he is one of my all-time favorite country music artists. He became big in 2005, top-rated artist in the industry. He has a lot of great songs, but one of my favorites is Tonight Looks Good on You. Other interesting things about Aldean: he has a rooftop restaurant and bar in Nashville. He and other artists help create brands that we connect with in other areas of business. Talking about brands, how about Dolly Parton? According to Lee Edwards, Dolly Parton has gone from a mountain girl to a mega personality and businesswoman. End quote. She has been a celebrity in music, acting, and a philanthropist and entrepreneur. She looks exactly the same and has been around forever. Parton has been featured in the Smithsonian National Museum of American History as part of Music Her Story exhibit. She has stayed relevant through the years and taken her brand to the movies and her theme park, Dollywood. I mean, who out there doesn't love a trip to Dollywood? According to Bobby Sawyer, a recent online article in Wide Open Country discussed country fans who were alive in the mid-90s may remember George Strait doing ads for Tractor Supply Company. His brand is attached to the tractor store. End quote. According to Bobby Sawyer, it's easy to imagine the king of country who grew up on a Texas ranch shopping at Tractor Supply. End quote. They say branding in country music has changed. Instead of artists branding themselves, brands are now doing demographic research on an artist to determine if they're a good fit to sell to their consumers. Book, Behind Closed Doors, Talking with Legends of Country Music by Elena Nash. This is the book I mentioned at the top of the podcast. Dolly is in the book, too, along with 26 other music legends. It's awesome. The other legends are older music stars I grew up to, listening with my grandparents, driving on trips, some of the songs A Country Boy Can Survive, and a family tradition by Hank Williams Jr. Also, Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys by Willie Nelson. This book talks about the music industry and all changes over the years with the audience and experiences. It covers 30 years of performers like Dolly Parton, Hank Williams Jr., and Willie Nelson, and Rebecca Entire. Who is still involved in the media on the show? The Voice. If you're a country music fan, this is a book for you. It has country and entertaining stories. Redneck and surprises. I told you it was coming. We would talk about politics today. This is one of the topics I've been learning more about. According to Chris Willman, start quote, politics is woven into the history of music. Country music in particular has changed over the years. We used to think of working class Democrats as the country fans, but now it's became the choice of the Republican Party, end quote. Another interesting book, Rednecks and Blue Necks, The Politics of Country Music by Chris Willman, discussing interesting points about politics and country music. He says it's not just the rural working class. Country music singers bring up political issues in their songs. Examples include Toby Keith, courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, and Clint Black, I Rock and Roll. A surprise recently of Beyonce, who is an African-American singer and songwriter, hit #1 Billboard music chart for her country song, 16 Characters. End quote. She performed country before back in 2016 with the song Daddy Lessons at the Country Music Awards with the Chicks, performing Dixie Chicks. The show was one of the most watched minutes of the Country Music Awards show in history. It shows how artists are turning to what audience want to hear, how popular country music has become. So, who is next? Country music is part of the American, whether you like beer, trucks, or wearing cowboy hats, you can still appreciate the lyrics and catchy tunes. Thank you for joining me with this country music podcast, this edition, Take on the South. Thank you, Brooks Bishop.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Take on the South, where we delve into the heart and soul of Southern music and culture. I'm your host, Chris Nash, and today we're going to shine a spotlight on a musician who's been making waves in the country music scene for decades. That's right, we're talking about none other than Darius Rucker. Let's start by taking a closer look at the man behind the music. Darius Rucker was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina, on May 13th, 1966, and was always fascinated with music since a young age. He finally got to become a part of his own sound when he founded Hootie and the Blowfish in 1986, right here at the University of South Carolina. Hootie and the Blowfish and Darius himself started in the rock and roll scene, influenced by earlier musical styles. The Cambridge Companion to the Guitar says, the distorted tones issuing from the 1970s electric guitars were indicative of a deeper shift in the cultural disposition towards sound. The electric guitar and tones from this era were exactly what Darius and Hootie and the Blowfish used when making their music. The band achieved massive success, but it was Rucker's solo career in country music that truly solidified his place in musical history. Rucker's transition to country music wasn't without its challenges, though. As an African-American artist in a predominantly white genre, he faced skepticism and prejudice from some quarters. Hidden in the mix, the African-American presence in country music by Diane Peckold claims that recent scholarship calls attention to country's role in constructing white identity and to the ongoing ideological work required to maintain the fiction of the genre's whiteness. It can be tough to succeed in situations with certain biases and unfair advantages, so Rucker deserves a ton of credit for his success in a genre like country music. However, his talent and perseverance soon won over audiences and critics alike because he remained more overtly loyal to the experience, desires, and language of a particular class and culture than almost any other. Now let's talk about some of Rucker's biggest hits. One of his most iconic songs is Wagon Wheel, a modern classic that has become a staple of country music playlists everywhere. Originally written by Bob Dylan and later completed by Ketch Secker of Old Crow Medicine Show, Wagon Wheel took on new life when Rucker released his version in 2013. Using instruments like the banjo and drums that took listeners back to original hillbilly music and old country, this song was able to draw listeners to the roots of country music. With its infectious melody and heartfelt lyrics, the song struck a chord with listeners and quickly climbed the charts, earning Rucker widespread acclaim. The New Encyclopedia of Southern Culture, Volume 12, says it's best. The South has inspired a seemingly unending body of songs that speak longingly of old Virginia or the hills of Caroline, while also singing the praises of the region's towns, counties, hills, rivers, bayous, and people, which is exactly what Wagon Wheel talks about. However, while this song was a huge smash, there's another song that arguably became bigger. Another standout track in Rucker's repertoire is All Right. This captured the essence of Rucker's newfound musical direction. Released in 2009 as part of his debut solo album, All Right is an uplifting country anthem that celebrates life's simple pleasures. The song's infectious melody and upbeat tempo drew listeners in, while its optimistic message of finding joy in life's simple moments resonated deeply with audiences. The song's sound helped Rucker cross over from country to pop music, just like another famous country artist known as Shania Twain. According to Sarah Davidson Palmer in Cool Country, given the past and current popularity of country pop crossover, such skills are essential for practitioners in today's country music industry, which is what Rucker does so effectively on this song. As we wrap up today's episode, I hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for the talent and impact of Darius Rucker. From his humble beginnings to his chart-topping success, Rucker's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance and the universal language of music. So whether you're singing along to Wagon Wheel on a road trip or finding comfort in the reassuring words of All Right, remember that Darius Rucker's music has a way of bringing people together and lifting spirits up wherever it's heard. Thanks for tuning in to Take on the South. Until next time, keep the music playing and the spirit of the South alive. Take care, y'all.
Hi, listeners. Welcome to Take on the South. I'm your host today, Jorden Jeffers, and I am so excited to share a snapshot of the life and discography of beloved Southern music legend Dolly Parton. Parton has been active in the music industry for over 50 years, collecting a number of accomplishments along the way. She's brought home 10 Grammy Awards in addition to the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2011. Furthermore, she has won 12 ACM awards, Parton was also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2022, as well as the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1999. With so many accolades, one can only wonder about the early life that led to such a lifelong passion for music. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born in Sevierville, Tennessee, to parents Robert and Abby Lee Parton as one of 11 siblings. Her father was a sharecropper and had a small tobacco farm. She was born into extreme poverty, her childhood home being a one-room cabin for 13 people, but this upbringing was influential on her musical stylings as well as her lyrics. Parton grew up in a musical home, her mother keeping the children entertained with Welsh immigrant songs. Parton's early discography is very Appalachian in nature. Appalachian music inspired ballad-type singing as well as fiddle, banjo, and guitar instrumentation. Despite the financial status of the home, Parton wrote her first songs at age 5 or 6, got her first guitar at age 8, and appeared on a local radio and television show at age 10. She then moved to Nashville in 1964 to pursue a musical career. This was actually the morning after her graduation from high school. While Parton's first few years started off slowly, she worked with Porter Wagner on The Porter Wagner Show as a co-host from 1967 to 1974. She then signed to Wagner's label RCA in 1967. Her first few famous songs included Jolene, Joshua, Coat of Many Colors, and more. While she had a rocky beginning, her numerous achievements show a passion that was no match for the initial struggle. On today's episode, I want to highlight two of Parton's earlier songs that you may or may not be familiar with, Coat of Many Colors and My Tennessee Mountain Home. The track Coat of Many Colors comes from an album of the same name and was released in 1971 via her label. The premise of the song is that her mother made a coat for her out of rags due to her not having a coat for the winter. She loved this coat so much due to the attention and the love that her mom instilled in it, although it was not expensive whatsoever and made out of rags that were given to them. The second verse of the song is as follows: "There were rags of many colors, every piece was small, and I didn't have a coat and it was way down in the fall. Mama sewed the rags together, sewing every piece with love. She made my coat of many colors that I was so proud of." It's evident in this song that she is sharing her story with us, recalling her impoverished upbringing, but more importantly, she was highlighting the love that was present in the household, as well as her pride in where she comes from, although they were not rich at all. The second song I want to highlight today is My Tennessee Mountain Home. This song also comes from an album of the same name, but was released a little bit later in 1973. The song contains vivid imagery of what life was like in the home, and she's also once again showing pride for her origins with her lyrics. Lyrics of the song are as follows: "Sitting on a front porch on this summer afternoon, in a straight-back chair on 2 legs, leaned against the wall, watch the kids a-playin' with June bugs on a string, and chase the glowing fireflies when evening shadows fall. In my Tennessee mountain home, life is as peaceful as a baby's sigh. In my Tennessee mountain home, crickets sing in the fields nearby." While she is giving us an autobiographical type song here and previously, she's more so giving us a glimpse into her upbringing by painting us a picture instead of telling us a story, which speaks to her talent and her diversity in the ways that she's able to give us a glimpse into her upbringing. Although she was born into a dirt-poor home, Parton has become one of the most successful music artists of the 21st century. Her Appalachian upbringing had a great impact on the sound of her early discography, noticeable in the songs mentioned, as well as more off of the albums by the same name. Parton's early songs are very autobiographical in nature, showing us what her early life was like. Parton's life is a shining example that no matter where you come from, with a little grit and tenacity, you too are capable of achieving your dreams. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Take on the South. Again, I am Jorden Jeffers. We hope you enjoyed this special episode in partnership with Dr. Emily Allen's Popular Musics of the South course at the University of South Carolina. Be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you again.
Hey, what's up, viewers, and welcome back to Take on the South, the show where we talk about where those sounds you love come from. My name's Josh, and I'll be your host today when we venture down through the history of the Big Easy. New Orleans. Our artist that we'll be journeying with is one of the greatest to ever do it, Louis Armstrong. With that, let's get right on into it. So when we think of the South and the cities there, I got to keep it real with y'all. Columbia is not what comes to mind first. I don't even think of Greenville first, and I was born and raised there for the first 18 years of my life. Nah, for me, a couple of other places come to mind. Your Charlestons, Nashvilles, Atlantas, but today, most importantly, New Orleans. And there's a true music city right there. That's a city with some real heritage and history. NOLA, as it's affectionately referred to, has long been an area rich with diversity and shared culture. A French and then Spanish colony, and then sold to the United States, thank you, Mr. Jefferson, Creole culture further fueled the port city immigration and made NOLA and its residents all their own. All these various cultures had music with them, and that all infused in some truly groundbreaking musical development. So much music came from this city, we just happen to be focusing on one of its most famous artists today, Louis Armstrong. You have to appreciate the fact that New Orleans is really a music city. Having been there, it really is something special. Also, as a trumpet player myself, and here at USC, the Louis Armstrong, that's a name that's gold. I mean, there's few that are that great. I still remember my freshman year of high school struggle busing my way through What a Wonderful World. But he played with ease, and we all know of it today. Oh, and the side note, anyone who says Cool Yule is anything less than a top 5 Christmas song, you are wrong, all right? It's just up there. Armstrong's life in a nutshell is basically that he was born, and from about 11 years of age on, nothing but music. Even in an orphanage, he still found his way to the top of a jazz band. Mentors like Bunk Johnson and King Oliver, two older and already popular trumpeters, taught him everything they could and even gave him opportunities to get started in their bands and gigs. Louis Armstrong leaving NOLA to follow King Oliver is what set his career on fire. He toured and traveled his entire life, whether it be deep in the South or in the urban North, and even across the pond to the UK or France. He was touring there and spreading his name. He was a shining beacon of what the American dream could be. Though he was a black man growing up in the South, he did not let that stop him. Louis Armstrong's sound could not be held back. When you share a last name with the first guy to walk on the moon and still come out about even in notoriety, you know you're doing something right. Armstrong brought jazz music to the world in a bigger way than anyone else. Now it's time to put the bow on the whole topic. Armstrong could not have become who he was if it was not for New Orleans. NOLA is what gave him his start. Those instrumental mentors I mentioned also have the Creole culture of NOLA to thank. None of them would have found the success they did without their home. New Orleans is a city that is acutely aware of its heritage. For example, the French Quarter is a host of numerous commemorations of music history, like New Orleans National Historic Park, A symbolic relationship between the Big Easy and the musicians it fosters is so incredibly apparent there. The culture of New Orleans shapes the artists, and the artists shape the history of New Orleans. With that, it's unfortunately time to force y'all to come back next week, or for our next podcast. Stay watching social media for your updates, and we'll see you next time on Take on the South.
Hello listeners, my name is Wilson Stokes. I'm a freshman here at USC majoring in music with a concentration in jazz studies, and I'm minoring in Southern Studies. I'm also an active musician in the Columbia jazz scene, and I would like to thank the Institute of Southern Studies for the opportunity to take on the South and talk about a very interesting group of musicians today. When it comes to the music of the South, metal is almost an afterthought in the Southern diaspora. Since heavy metal, and its varieties genres are primarily English and Californian inventions, it is no surprise that the South has had much smaller representation in the genre compared to the other various evolutions of the blues. Surprisingly, this is beginning to change. Today we will be talking about the Nashville stoner metal group, All Them Witches. All Them Witches formed in 2012 after drummer Robbie Stapler met guitarist Ben McLeod in a bar where he was gigging, and, while working in a local chain hippie store, befriended the bassist and frontman Charles Michael Parks Jr. The blues metal band currently has released 6 studio albums, 3 live albums, 5 EPs, 21 singles. The band pulls their sound from a variety of influence, including psychedelia, blues, stoner metal, and space rocks. Today, I will be picking apart the song Half Tongue off of their 5th record entitled ATW. In the song, the lyrics are spoken by a titular character who offers friendship if said character, Half-Tongue, is treated right. This character asked the listener multiple questions, such as, will they hide their cloven feet? Or who will wear the crown when you rule over yourself? Both the speakers are immediately identified with demonic imagery and by association, pagan imagery. Cloven feet and the idea of ruling intertwines with the common imagery of the horn god Cernunnos, the male deity found in Wicca and a variety of other pagan religions. Fauns are not an uncommon idea of worship as well, such as Pan from Greek myth. However, the horn god was turned into Satan during the Christianization of Europe, thus evoking demonic imagery. Half-Tongue, because of this, is not escaping satanic imagery. Satan is often depicted with a split or half-tongue throughout countless decades of artistic interpretation. The tongue motif comes directly from the devil's serpent form found taunting Eve in the Garden of Eden. Half-Tongue's demonic parallels do not just end with their appearance. The character spouts that they are the brightest star of them all, outshining all in glorious hell, and brings attention to their antagonistic character by stating, "You better step aside when I come walking by." These villainous characteristics, with Half-Tongue's claims of being your friend for life if you just treat me right, and prompts to call them, and the sudden manipulation of other characters by pointing out that they are hiding their secrets as dreams, and that they are holding all of their shame. The song quickly sets up a scene of a demon trying to convince someone to sell their soul. This famous Faustian tale hits particularly hard in the band's association with the blues. Famously, the bluesman Robert Johnson was said to have sold his soul at the crossroads to play guitar. This is arguably the most famous story in all of blues history, and All Them Witches seems to reframe the scene towards a more devilish perspective. The instrumentation of the band also falls into the same groove as the electric blues of Chicago, albeit a heavier version. Ben McLeod offers a dense knowledge of blues vocabulary on the guitar, and the presence of violin and organ, both played by multi-instrumentalist Alan Von Cleve, also evokes this southern sound. The organ, particularly, provides the unique role of not just playing the devil's music of blues and jazz, but also conjures images of church and sacred music, overall continuing to feed into the duality of the song. I think why this band stands out so much can be summarized from a quote from the book Electric Wizard's A Tapestry of Heavy Metal Music, 1968 to the present, by J.R. Moores, which states that real heavy music typically has a low art grubbiness and rawness to it. Relatively cheaply made and ramshackle in nature, it glories in its own messiness and imperfections. All Them Witches exemplifies this due to the general griminess felt around their music in the same kind of way Muddy Waters has to his music. It all has that Southern soul vibe to it. Needless to say, I'm very excited to see where this group goes. I know they're opening for Primus at the Rabbit Rabbit this summer up in Asheville, so I'm going to try to catch that show. Thank you so much.
Hey y'all, my name is Andy Matson, and I'm very excited to welcome you to this episode of the Take on the South podcast. I'm a longtime listener and first-time host. Today, we will be discussing the career and controversies of one of my favorite Southern artists. Known as Lil Nas X professionally, Montero Lamar Hill was born in 1999 in the Atlanta area. He built up a social media following before first releasing music in 2018 at age 19. His first hit, Old Town Road, took off on TikTok in early 2019 with the viral Yeehaw Challenge, encouraging listeners to post videos in cowboy getup. The song was also kept popular through its success in remix culture, as many on TikTok began to release their own versions of the song, and Lil Nas X himself released many collaborations with remix artists. Old Town Road is notable for bringing together historically racially segregated genres of rap and country, and the controversy that followed its rise to the top of the Billboard Hot 100. The song brought out discussions that crossing racialized genres is typically a one-way street, with white artists moving into black genres. It reached 19 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart before it was disqualified for not fitting the country genre. In response, Lil Nas X released a new version and a music video featuring country artist Billy Ray Cyrus. This version remained on Billboard Country Airplay charts throughout the summer, And Lil Nas X embracing this cowboy aesthetic draws attention to a legacy of black cowboys being ignored in the history of the American West, just as black musicians' contributions to country music have been ignored. His next big hit came from his debut album in 2021, Montero. While Old Town Road became the longest-running #1 song in Billboard history, Lil Nas X came out as queer. He's the only artist to do so while having a #1 record, and this stirred up a second batch of controversy. In Montero, he leans into this controversy with overtly queer lyrics, particularly in the title track and early single, Montero, Call Me By Your Name. The video plays with religious imagery with queer, sexually charged, satanic, and biblical themes, for which it received both praise and backlash while topping the Billboard Hot 100. This backlash reached a peak with the release of Satan Shoes by Mischief, an art collective collaborating with Lil Nas X. 666 pairs of modified Nike Air Max 97s were to be sold for $1,018, references to 666, the mark of the beast, and the Bible verse Luke 10:18. This was the second modified Nike shoe released by Mischief after a Jesus shoe in 2019. These Satan shoes upset conservative commentators and led Nike to sue Mischief. More backlash was then issued at these conservative commentators for centering Christianity and lobbying to crack down on religious freedoms for Satanists and freedom of expression for the broader public. The third single off Montero, Industry Baby, was released with a prison-themed music video with Lil Nas X and Jack Harlow. The song was a celebration of the two artists' success, with sexual lyrics and scenes for both, including Lil Nas X dancing naked with a group of fellow prisoners, and Jack Harlow hooking up with a female guard. When this was inevitably met with more controversy, much of it centered around the differences in reaction to Jack Harlow's straight displays of sexuality and Lil Nas X's queer displays of sexuality. This died down after the song gradually fell off charts, but was revived following the 2022 Black Entertainment Television Award nominations. While Jack Harlow, a white man, was nominated for Male Hip Hop Artist of the Year, Lil Nas X received no nominations and went to Twitter to assert that the snub was born out of homophobia within black spaces. He posted that Industry Baby is the second longest-running #1 song on the Billboard rap charts of all time and didn't get a single BET nomination, especially as he was nominated 5 times at the 2022 Grammy Awards. He released a diss track titled Late to the Party with NBA Youngboy, featuring album art of a man urinating on a BET award in a toilet. As for his career today, the first single off his sophomore album was released in January. The second was released a few weeks later, along with his HBO documentary, Lil Nas X, Long Live Montero. Several snippets of other tracks off the album have been put out, but a release date has not been set. And with Lil Nas X's history of shaking things up, we can hope for something headline-making with this new album. His music walks an intersection of his own southernness, blackness, and queerness, and his start on social media using remix, meme, and fashion culture has aligned him with youth ideals. Born out of the Atlanta hip-hop scene and making waves in both the country and rap genres, Lil Nas X represents a new era of Southern music. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Take on the South podcast. I've been Annie Matson, and y'all have been great.
Welcome to the Take on the South podcast. I'm your host, Justin Gilbert, a student in this semester's Popular Musics of the Southern United States class here at the University of South Carolina. We will be discussing the country boy who survived, Hank Williams Jr. Hank Williams Jr. was born in 1949 as the heir apparent to country music. His father, the beloved Hank Williams Sr., who had always called his young son Bocephus after a puppet from the Grand Ole Opry, had made a name for himself, putting out nationwide hits on the country western charts. Hank Williams would tragically pass away when Jr. was only 3 years old. However, the influence that Sr. maintained on both his son and country music would extend far beyond his natural life. When Hank Williams Jr. began his career in the country music industry, he recorded covers of his father's songs. But like most children, Jr. would soon rebel from the tradition of his father. Jr. would carve out for himself a spot in the burgeoning subgenre of country music, outlaw. Fellow outlaw musicians like Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, and Willie Nelson fleshed out the rebel identity that would become synonymous with Hank Jr. After a near-fatal mountain climbing accident and years of rehabilitation, Jr. would shuck the musical traditions of his father and embrace his identity as a rowdy Southern rocker. After decades of hits in the Southern region, he would have a national resurgence with his hit, All My Rowdy Friends Are Coming Over Tonight, becoming the theme for Monday Night Football in the early 90s.
One of the reasons for Junior's success was his co-opting of the rebel imagery in his music and personality. The lost cause mythology of the post-Civil War era South gave legs to the idea of the Southern man as a rebellious figure, and this is heavily present in his lyricism. As an artist, Junior has even directly leaned into pro-Confederate lost cause ideology. For example, the song If the South Would Have Won provides an alternate history that if the Confederate States had been victorious, Junior himself would have been elected president. In A Country Boy Can Survive, he outlines the importance of traditional Southern agrarianism and self-sufficiency as values that will outlast those of other regions. Hank Jr.'s rebellious personality and musicality reinforce these principles of Southern identity and continue in much of his fan base this idea of Southern rebellion. As we have already discussed, Hank Jr. was born into the home of country music royalty. Family groups are nothing new to country music. Groups like the Carter family are seen as icons and originators of the genre. When Hank Jr. first made his way onto the country music scene, he was touted as a, quote, Hank Williams impersonator, a fair moniker, as much of his early works were covers of his father's songs. However, as Hank Jr. aged out of his father's shadow, debates regarding not only the continuation of the music of the Williams family, but country music as a whole, shook the core of the Nashville industry. As debates surrounding the authenticity of country music abounded, Hank Williams Jr. released a duet of his father's song, There's a Tear in My Beer, and an accompanying music video where Jr. appeared with a figure that represented his father. Williams in this action and his overall musicality represented and continues to represent to millions of country fans around the country a continuation of authentic country music. Jr.'s preservation of his father's musical legend is not the last bastion of the Williams family legacy in country music. Hank III, who was a musician in his own style, more Southern punk by far than any of his ancestors, still preserves in modern music the same outlaw imagery that his father portrayed so well. In this episode of Take on the South, we have discussed the life and music of Hank Williams Jr. Hank Jr., the purveyor of Southern sounds that went national, who occupies in the minds of many of his fans a savior-like image. To these men and women, Williams and his music represent not only the preservation of the music they know and love, but some of the very aspects of regional identity they hold most dear. Rebel, country boy, heir apparent, all these monikers have been used to try and explain this giant of Southern music, but I'm sure Junior himself will be plenty happy if we all just called him Bocephus. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Take on the South podcast.